Essays on Untouchables and Untouchability Religious by Babasaheb Ambedkar. Chapter 4, Part 4. The directors would be doing their duty neither to the shareholders nor the British nation if they allowed itinerant tinkers to preach the natives into insurrection. The natives must be taught a better religion at a time and in a manner that will not inspire them with a passion for political change. Our duties to our families and country are set before us by God Himself. We are not at liberty to desert them in order to give a remote chance of conferring greater benefits on strangers at a distance. It is arguments such as those which prevailed with Parliament and led to the rejection of the clause in 1793. Wilberforce twitted members of Parliament by reminding them that their Christianity was not a religion of convenience, but it was a religion established by law. But as has been well pointed out, for the major portion of those counted in the 18th century, the religion accepted by the state and society as a convenience was something to be used with fact and discretion at home. There was no need to diffuse it recklessly abroad. The general atmosphere, as has been often been pointed out, was remarkably like that of Augustan Rome. To the statesman thinking imperially, all religions were equally useful, each in its proper place. The attempt to open the door to the missionaries failed, and the missionary was shut out from India till 1813. Not only was he shut out, but the company's government kept a strict vigil upon the activities of such stray missionaries who contrived to go to India without their license. In 1793, Dr. Carey went as an interloper without a license. As he was not allowed to enter Calcutta with being without license, he made Shirampur, 14 miles away from Calcutta, as his base of operation. Shirampur was a Danish settlement, and the Danes had placed no restrictions on missionaries or mission propaganda. On the contrary, the governor of Shirampur actively helped them. Carey and his mission was always suspect in the eyes of the company's government. In 1798, the Shirampur mission decided to engage four missionaries who arrived in the year 1800. They went to reside in the Danish settlement of Shirampur. As a matter of fact, the Governor General had nothing to do with them, but the unconcealed residence of those unlicensed enthusiasts was too much for the company's Governor General, and Lord Wellesley wrote to the Governor of Shirampur, would His Excellency see to the expulsion of these interlopers who might at any moment violate the territories of the British East India Company? To which the Danish government replied that he would do nothing of the kind. Similar action was taken in 1806 when Captain Wicks brought two more missionaries in the Criterion which anchored off of Calcutta. Sir George Barlow was then the Governor General. He took a most extraordinary action to prevent the landing of these two missionaries. He ordered that the captain be not given his clearance papers unless he agreed to take back the two missionaries. Although they had gone to live in Shirampur and were in fact under the protection of the Danish crown. This was not only a more unreasonable attitude towards missionaries, but it was also an attitude which could not be regarded as hostile. The Vellore mutiny among Indian soldiers, which took place in 1806, was quite erroneously attributed to missionary propaganda, and Sir George Barlow, in a panicky condition, proceeded to put the following restrictions on the activities of the Shirampur missionaries. 1. The missionaries remain at Shirampur. 2. They must not preach openly at the bazaar. 3. Native converts might preach provided they are not sent forth as emissaries from Shirampur. The vehemence with which the government of Bengal came down upon the Shirampur mission in 1807 for issuing a tract on Islam in which quite inadvertently the Prophet Muhammad was called an impostor also furnishes further evidence of the attitude of hostility which government of the company bore towards the missionaries. The government of Bengal refused to be satisfied with the apologies of Dr. Carey and insisted upon the transfer of the press from Shirampur to Calcutta in order that government may be in a better position to control the literature issued therefrom. The news caused dismay, for it meant the disruption of their mission. As usual, the governor of the Danish settlement came to their rescue and told the frightened Shirampur missionaries that he would fight their battle if the government of Bengal forcibly removed the press to Calcutta. Subsequent matters were settled and the order was withdrawn. But the fact remains that the government of the company was not a friend of the missionaries. So much for the excuse which they can legitimately plead. But what attitude did they take when they were allowed after 1813 to operate in the field? Did they take the line that caste must go from the thought and life of the convert? The earliest pronouncement of a Protestant missionary does not warrant an affirmative answer. Missionaries in tolerating caste. Dr. Hine in 1814 wrote, missionaries in many instances have fallen into a mistake of a very injurious nature to their rapid or even ultimate success. In converting a Hindu to Christianity, they oblige him to adopt a line of conduct by which he loses his caste. This in India is considered such a disgrace that it must present a powerful obstacle into conversion. But the political division of the Hindus is no part of their religious tenets, though it has been so mistaken by the most enlightened. In giving to the Hindus the Christian religion, allow them to retain their caste, and they could be found to embrace it without reluctance and in considerable numbers. But I do not wish to judge the attitude of Protestant missions to so important a question from so stray a pronouncement of a solitary individual. There is evidence to show that the Protestant missions were once early in their career called upon to make up their mind on this important issue so that it can be said that the view maintained by the Protestant mission is a considered view. The time when this issue was discussed seriously was the time when Reverend Heber was appointed the Bishop of Calcutta. He assumed his duties in the year 1823. During his episcopate, he toured extensively in the whole of India and in Ceylon. In the course of his tour, he became aware of the sharp conflict of opinion among Protestant missionaries to the question of toleration of caste among converts. He decided to resolve this difference. How he went about the business is told in the words of Mr. K, who has succinctly narrated it. There was strife, therefore, among the missionaries which Heber was anxious to allay. The question had been brought before him before he quitted Bengal. He had there sought to arm himself with all the information that he could obtain respecting not only the practice of the earlier Protestant missionaries, but the true nature of the institution of caste. There was then in Bishop's College a Christian convert known as Christian David. He had been a pupil of Schwartz and was truly a remarkable man. No less distinguished for his intelligence than for his piety, he was regarded by the good bishop as the one of all others to whom he might most expediently refer for the solution of his doubts. Heber drew up, therefore, a series of questions which he submitted to the native Christian, and received from him a series of replies stated only in excellent English, but also with a force and precision which could not easily be surpassed. First, with regard to the nature of caste, it was declared by Christian David that it was among the natives of southern India purely a worldly idea, not connected in their minds with any notion of true or false religion, that the natives converts drawn from the higher caste were disinclined to intercourse with lower caste proselytes, not on religious or superstitious grounds, but simply for social reasons, that there were certain distinctions between high caste and low caste persons not by any means ideal, and these distinctions were not to be gilded over merely by the acquisitions of worldly wealth. He especially set forth that low caste people indulged habitually in an unseemly mode of speech, frequently using coarse or indecent expressions very revolting to the feelings of the high caste men, and that they were altogether less decorous and self respectful in their way of life. Learning, he said, might elevate them, and if a pariah became learned, he was called a pandit and respected by the church. And then his brother converts would associate with him, but they would not, from worldly fear or pride, eat with him from the same dish. From the days of Ziegenbalg downwards, they had been wont to sit at church in two separate divisions and had communicated separately at the Lord's table, drinking out of the same cup, with high caste converts ranking first. As a proof, however, that these were regarded as merely worldly distinctions, Christian David said that high caste and low caste among the Christian congregations of the South were buried in a common burial ground and took part promiscuously in the funeral ceremonies, as if with the consciousness contrary to the heathen nations, the death leveled all distinctions. Rather by mild remonstrance and persuasion than by the enactment of any stringent rules which might have proved great obstructions to Christianity, the elder missionaries had sought to mitigate the evil, and Christian David declared that under the ministration of Schwartz the evil had considerably diminished. But Mr. Raines of the Christian Missionary Society, a truly conscientious and devout Christian, had taken other views of the duties of Christian teachers and had gained over to his opinions the younger missionaries of the South, so that they agreed, as I have said, among themselves to make the total repudiation of caste, even in its mere social aspect, as an essential condition of admittance into the Christian Church. And they had moreover spoken and preached against the elder missionaries, even the most venerated of their predecessors, denouncing them as corrupters of the gospel for having permitted such things to soil the purity of Christianity. Of all this, Christian David spoke with profound regret. His own opinions were naturally inclined to the doctrine and practice of his old master Christian Schwartz. The mild interference and affectionate advice of the bishop might, he thought, dispose the hearts of the younger missionaries towards greater toleration and forbearance. Very earnestly and very conscientiously did Heber revolve this important subject in his mind. It is in accordance with all that we know of the character of the man that he should have inclined towards the more conciliatory practices of the elder missionaries. But he deferred any final decision until the opportunity should arrive for the collection of further information and the delivery of a sounder and fuller judgment on the spot. When, therefore, he visited the Southern Presidency, he wrote letters of inquiry to some of the principal missionaries and instituted a select committee of the Christian Knowledge Society for the purposes of making a further investigation into the subject. From one letter written to the Reverend Dr. Shri Vogel, though little more than a series of questions, the bent of his opinions may be derived. It appeared to him, after much deliberate consideration, that caste, as represented to exist among the Christian converts on the coast, was in reality an institution differing little in its essential freedom features from the social exclusiveness prevailing in Christian countries. Is there no such thing, he asked himself, as caste in Europe? Is there no such thing as caste in America? Do not the high and low sit apart in our English churches? Do not our well dressed high caste folks go up first to the altar to communicate? Do high and low sit down to meet together? Do their children attend the same schools? Are there no pariahs amongst us? In other civilized countries, is there not a prevailing sense of caste apart from all associations of worldly distinctions? Does not the Spanish hidalgo wear his caste bravely beneath his threadbare cloak? Is the wealthiest mulatto a fit companion for the poorest wife? It may be called blood or anything else another, but in its essential features, the one thing differs but little from the other. It is an unintelligible and appreciable Christian principle that all men in the sight of God are equal. But it is equally certain that all are not equal in the sight of man. And it is fair presumption that God never intended them to be equal. Social distinctions exist everywhere, and if argued the bishop, the distinctions which exist among the converts on the southern coast are merely social distinctions, why should we endanger the success of our efforts by endeavoring to enforce the law of equality which is maintained among no other classes of men? In this wise thought, Bishop Heber, he had said from the first that if he could be of any service to the Christian cause in India, it would be as a moderator, that by a conciliatory course, smoothing down the asperities of the overzealship, he might hope to do much good as the chief missionary, and now he believed that it was his duty to cast in the weight of his authority upon the side of those who had resolved not to pour too much of new wine into the old bottles. This view was more forcefully expressed by another Protestant missionary, Reverend Robert Noble, who came out to India in 1841 and was in charge of the Church of England mission work in Mausoleepatnam, made it a rule to exclude pariahs, leather workers, and scavengers from his school. Defending himself against the charge of introducing caste in the Christian fold, he defended himself in the following terms. The humblest and most pious Christian parents in England would not allow their sons, much less their daughters, to be educated with their footmen, with their cooks, and their scullery maids. Perhaps I was punished oftener by my pious father for stealing away to play with the boys of the village than on any other account. While in the best ordered Christian family I have ever seen, the children were not allowed to converse with the servants or to descend the second step of the stairs into the kitchen. My father would not have allowed us to mix with the cooks or stable boys' children, nor can I see it right to require of Brahmins that before we will teach them the gospel, they must sit down on the same form with the pariah and the sweeper. The requirement is to be unreasonable and unchristian. It is true that many wise and devout Christians since Heber's time believed that he was altogether wrong, and that Bishop Wilson at a later time period reversed his decision, emphatically pronouncing against all toleration for the inequities of caste on the ground that it was an innate part of the Hindu religion. But the fact remained not only the official but also the general view of the Protestant missions in India regarding the place of caste in Indian Christianity. Thus, all missionaries agreed that Christianity should be made easy in order that it may spread among Indians. On this point, there seems to be difference of kind among Catholic, Lutherans, and Protestants. Such differences exist is of one degree. If there exists caste and other forms among Christian converts, it is the result of this policy, the policy of making Christianity easy. In adopting this policy, the missionaries never thought that someday somebody would ask them, what good is Christianity for a Hindu if it does not do away with caste? They misunderstood their mission and thought that making a person Christian was the same thing as making him a follower of Christ. The end.